Hi there, great Sunday everyone. Welcome to another episode with Beta Change. Now I'm pretty sure many of you out there is doing something awesome with the diabetes community as we celebrate this special month of November in creating awareness about diabetes. So for today's Minisode, we have Georgie Peters from Melbourne, Australia. Now Georgie is the Australian manager of the Diabetes and Eating Disorders Awareness Group. So Georgie, could you tell our viewers more about yourself?
Hi, I'm Georgie. I'm the Australian Manager for Diabetes and Eating Disorders Awareness. There's me and one other woman, Lisa, who runs the New Zealand part of it. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you guys about diabetes and eating disorders awareness, because it's a cause that's very close to my heart. So I'm Georgie. I'm 25. I live in Melbourne, Australia. My day job, I'm a French and English teacher to high school students. And I also coordinate diabetes camps for teenagers as well. And I guess I got started in this area because I went through an eating disorder with diabetes myself, and I found that there was no support, either peer support or sort of healthcare support for people going through this issue. So I couldn't find anything, so I decided to start up Better with Lisa.
Great. So just a quick introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Kayan. I'm actually one of the co-founders for Beta Change. And for those who have just joined us, you are watching another mini-sode with Beta Change. And today we'll be discussing about diabetes and eating disorder. So, Georgie, could you tell us what is an eating disorder?
Okay, so you can sort of, an eating disorder generally is a person with an eating disorder basically has disturbed eating behaviours that are coupled with extreme concerns about weight, shaming, or their body image. It's not a lifestyle choice and it's not an extreme diet. It's classified as a mental illness. However, it does also have really wide-ranging and serious physical complications. So it's really a mix of both a physical illness as well as a mental illness.
Okay, so usually people don't really associate this eating disorder with diabetes. So how are they linked?
That's a really good question. So essentially, the sorts of eating disorders / disordered eating and diabetes go hand in hand, because when you look at diabetes, the treatment for it is literally disordered eating. The way that we ask people to treat their diabetes is in a way something that we would never ask a person with diabetes to do. The diet culture that's already present in our culture at the moment, it's hardened by the diabetes community. So there's a real focus on weight within the diabetes community, both by healthcare professionals and also other people with diabetes. And so really the emphasis on food, the emphasis on weighing your food, the emphasis on numbers, the emphasis on weight and body size, and at times restriction of certain food groups within the sort of diabetic community. There's not a lot of types of diabetes, but with type 1 diabetes, there are huge mortality and morbidity rates compared with the general population. So it's also it's an acute problem as well, because there are issues that happen when people with diabetes get an eating disorder that may not happen with another person.
I mean, just a quick question. Is that like a big population? What's the population like, of people with eating disorder in your area, like in Australia?
So in Australia, there's a couple of different, the research on this is really sparse, really not a lot of it. The research is done within the type 1 population. They say that nearly 1 in 3 people with diabetes suffers from some form of disordered eating. So it may not be a full-blown eating disorder, but may be disordered eating. So within a certain food group or preoccupation with their body, their size. And then from there, there's quite a high prevalence as well in terms of actual eating disorders. And it's really important to point out as well that insulin restriction is not only it's not the only eating disorder that people with diabetes have. It's also very common to have bulimia, anorexia, binge eating disorder, or OSFED as well. And it tends to sort of interlink. You can sometimes classify insulin restriction as, say, a purging behaviour. So in Australia, I don't want to give there's a lot of different stats, and I don't want to give an actual number because it's going to be repeated by another study. They do estimate when you look at the ESS resources that it's probably about 1 in 3 people that have some sort of disordered eating, and then from there you kind of can extrapolate that 1 in 6 would have an eating disorder, and it's often not picked up because a lot of the time eating disordered behaviours are often seen as sort of good diabetes behaviour. It's quite difficult to diagnose.
Oh, thank you. So, how can we tell that a person might have an eating disorder? You know, what are the signs and symptoms of it?
A person with an eating disorder?
So, what are the signs and symptoms of a person with diabetes with an eating disorder?
That's a really good question. So basically the signs and symptoms are interesting because many things that would be signs and symptoms in someone without quite quickly. Also elevated HbA1c level is quite common as well. There's often insulin manipulation that goes along with it. Also, if you tend to be persecuted by this disorder, you'll have got diabetic acidosis quite a few times. Is a really big red flag sort of eating disorder. Also, early onset and inflammation complications. It's often very common if you've had an eating disorder with diabetes and you've been manipulating insulin, your eye complications and your nerve complications accelerate quite quickly. It's got an eating disorder with diabetes as well. They have fluctuating blood glucose levels, but beyond the normal fluctuation. Beyond the normal up and down and sort of very up, like very, very hard to manage. It's also possible that there'd be an increased number of infections or slow healing infections due to sort of the high blood sugars. And then there's your classic sort of decay symptoms or high sugar symptoms because all of this may not be being manipulated. So, for example, sugar, going to the toilet, dry skin, all those high blood sugars. But then as well, there's also classic eating disorder symptoms. So extreme concerns of your weight and image, terrible themes, business, change in eating patterns. So there's been just restriction on eating, fatigue with pale skin, electrolyte abnormalities, low mood, thin hair. And then something that's quite common with people with these disorders is also avoiding medical appointments. So not uploading data, not wanting to go to a medical appointment, essentially trying to hide what they're going from their healthcare team, because a lot of the time people with diabetes can feel shamed when they're at their healthcare team, and a lot of the time when you have diabetic eating disorder, your sugars will be up and down, and very common to sort of feel judged and scared to go towards your healthcare professional. So often people that are struggling may not want to go to their appointments or really talk about their diabetes at all.
Those who have just joined us, welcome to our Minisode, and today we are discussing on diabetes and eating disorder. So, Georgie, before we continue, there is actually a comment by Stephanie. I'm going to flash it on the screen, and she says, have you found out that HCPs are aware of the link between diabetes and eating disorders? And the next question she asks is, do you think this link is more acceptable in certain parts of the world? Yep.
It's a really good question from Steph. It really depends on the healthcare professional that you're with and their exposure to a lot of the mental health issues that can be found sort of within our community. My healthcare professional, so my D&E was fantastic, and she definitely sort of looked at the high blood sugars, the mood, put two and two together. And I do think as well that this link is more accepted in certain parts of the world. So I guess, for example, if your healthcare professional is more educated about the mental health issues that go along with diabetes, it's much more likely that they will be able to sort of put two and two together. The NDSS in Australia has also recently released a sort of information resource pack for healthcare professionals on eating disorders, diabetes, or disordered eating and diabetes. So I know that there are healthcare professionals in Australia that are going through this sort of training. I can't say the same for New Zealand. I haven't heard anything yet. But I do think that it's getting better in the diabetes healthcare sort of sphere, but within the general sphere, so say if someone with an eating disorder and diabetes goes to their GP, a lot of the time they'll be told to take their insulin, or that you just need to start eating properly again, and they don't particularly take it as serious as they might with someone without diabetes. So there's definitely some progress made. Especially with the release of the diabulimia documentary, but also there needs more education sort of within the general HCP community.
Yeah, so you mentioned about diabulimia, and like BBC Three recently they did a documentary about it. So what exactly is diabulimia?
It basically means that you emit or you restrict your insulin for the purpose of weight control. So essentially, you find you eat. You may binge. The eating patterns very varied, but diabulimia essentially manipulating your insulin to stay at a certain weight or to lose weight. It's really dangerous. So even in its most mild forms, it can really cause devastating physical consequences. Research suggests that actually 30 to 40% of females, so unfortunately there's not a lot of research on males and other types of diabetes, but in females with type 1 diabetes, 30 to 40% restrict their insulin to control their weight. It is obviously a massive danger, and the mortality rates and the complications are much more acute. So, for example, in a classic eating disorder such as sort of classic bulimia, binge eating, OSFED, anorexia, there are huge physical complications. However, they are much slower to develop. Whereas in diabulimia, if someone's really finding it hard to take their insulin, constantly in DKA, it's a very, very quick turnaround between being in DKA and possible. So it's really scary, because essentially the tool that we're using, this community is using when they're unwell to hurt themselves, is also the thing that gives us life and keeps us alive and helps us treat our diabetes. So it's a really, really sort of unique problem. And it's really difficult to treat a lot of the time, because you've got to treat yourself with the thing that you're also using to hurt yourself. So it's not recognised officially. However, it's sort of, the term is being thrown around more and more. And it's really sort of up to the psychologists and the psychiatrists of the world to get together and discuss whether this falls under OSFED, so other feeding and eating disorders, or whether it deserves, but whether it's a diagnosis sort of all on its own.
What is the treatment that they will have to undergo?
Currently in the Southern Hemisphere, there's no inpatient or outpatient treatment for this, and it's really up to the person with the diabetes to sort of find their own treatment. So in Australia, what usually happens is that we encourage you to go to your GP. They're your first port of call. You'll go to them and tell them what's going on. I'm having trouble eating. I'm having trouble eating too much. I'm having trouble with my insulin. Whatever's going on, you let them know, and you gain a mental health plan. And then from there, you also connect to your diabetes team and let them know that you're struggling. And from there, what needs to happen is that your diabetes team, your GP, needs to work together to figure out the best course of action for you. So, for example, it can sometimes be an eating disorder clinic, so you can be referred to a public eating disorder clinic, and you talk to them, you say what the issues are, and you can work with them sort of weekly for the public system. And within there, you'll have a dietitian, a psychologist, and really everyone that you need to help you. However, it is a really difficult way to treat it, because your psychologist 99.9% of the time not experiencing diabetes, so you tend to sort of educate them at the same time. And so because a lot of the recovery stuff they may try and do with you doesn't work with diabetes, we have to still count our food. We can't stop carb counting. We can't stop testing our blood sugar. We can't sort of start to ignore numbers, because unfortunately our life is about numbers a lot of the time. And it's also quite frustrating as well, because sometimes you'll come in and they will say, well, that's a diabetes issue. Like, well, no, it's actually a factor of my eating disorder. Like, it's driven by these eating disorder thoughts, and try and handle it back to the diabetes team. The diabetes team is going, well, no, that's that's not us. Like, you need to tackle the eating disorder stuff before you come back to us and work with us about your blood sugar levels. So that's a possibility. It puts a lot of pressure on the person who's getting the treatment. And that's the issue we're trying to fix at the moment, because the onus of being a person with diabetes to go backwards and forwards really should be on the healthcare team. We need to work together. So you can either, you can go through the PASS system, or what you can do, get a mental health care plan, get a psychologist, and we recommend that you find a psychologist that supports, because you're not able to work on the physical aspects of the diabetes and being burnt out and having the diabetes and the eating disorder before you tackle those eating disorder thoughts. So whether it's through the public system in an outpatient clinic, or whether it's in the private system, seeing a psychologist, the main theme that runs throughout both ways of treatment is that you need to sort of coordinate between the two. And unfortunately, that's sort of where we are at the moment.
That sounds like there's lots of things for the healthcare professional to work on and to improve with regards to understanding a bit more about eating disorder as a condition, and linking how do we work with people with diabetes with such conditions. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, if I have a friend who has the eating disorder, or if I myself think that I have an eating disorder, is there some way of getting help, or how do I actually access help?
If you listen to this and thinking, I think I might have a bit of an issue with food, the first person to go to would be your GP. I recommend you need to have a really good general practitioner, family doctor, whoever your main port of call is, whether that's your GP or your diabetes educator, and going to them and saying, look, I think I've got an issue. I think there's something going on. You can also, if you're comfortable doing that, you are able to sort of talk to us. To add data, we're on Facebook, we've got a website. If you come to us, there's a few, we've got a checklist, a 10-step checklist. With basically, if you go down and you can check, okay, am I doing this? Am I just a little bit, is there a little bit of disordered eating, or is this really becoming more of a problem? We also recommend that if you are feeling like something is going on, talking to a loved one about it. And if you have a friend with diabetes, sort of talking to them about it as well, and trying to figure out what's really going on in your head, I guess. And then if you love someone with diabetes and you think they may be going through this, we recommend chatting to them in a non-confrontational way and just asking, are you okay? Like, how's it going? I've noticed that this has been going on, or that has been going on. How are you going? And it's really important to stress that this needs to be a very non-confrontational sort of I'm here for you aspect, rather than you're doing this and this isn't okay. Because the most important thing for anyone that's suffering from an eating disorder is that they don't feel judged and that they feel supported. Often people with diabetes and eating disorder will be told to just eat, or just to suck it up, or take the insulin, and it's not sort of helping anyone. So as to get back to the main crux of the matter, the first person to talk to is your GP or your diabetes educator, because they'll be the person to sort of put you to the next port of call. So they made a mental health care assessment. They ask you some more questions. They may refer you on to someone else who's more specialised. The hardest thing is going into that medical office. Once you're there and once you've had a chat, then you can start to put more things in place. It's also really important to make sure that you access peer support. We have a peer support page, but also if you know other people that are going through this, if you have other friends with diabetes, it's really important to talk about this with people who have diabetes, because as much as psychologists are fantastic at their job, it's hard for them to understand a lot of the time. And we really do encourage that people reach out and talk to those of us who are also going through the same thing, because you'll find that it's a really isolating disease, especially having diabetes and an eating disorder together. And you'll find that lots of the things that you thought were unique to you and the feelings that you're going through are actually being experienced by everyone.
Thank you so much for all your information that you have just shared with us on this minisode. So I'm sure many of you have gained a better insight about what eating disorder is and how it's linked with diabetes. And I'm sure you will bring back some useful information to share with your diabetes community. So as many of you who have heard or watched the video, BBC Three actually recently produced a documentary about diabulimia, and it's a very dangerous eating disorder for people with diabetes. And it's really quite eye-opening for me because I actually watched the music, I watched the video myself, and it's quite insightful about, how people feel, why, or the things that they go through their mind, when they have this eating disorder, and, the emotions and all this, the things that weighs on them. And we hope that through this minisode and from the documentary, you have gotten a better understanding about the eating disorders. So we have actually come to the end, pretty much the end of our minisode today. So Georgie, do you have any last word for our audience?
I guess there's there's two words or two phrases I have. If the audience, if you're out there and you think that you may be going through an eating disorder, or you may be at the start of one, or if you're in the middle of one, down in the deep, I just really want you to know that recovery, it's really hard, but you will get there. So you're never past the point of no return. It's never too late. Just put one from the other, 1 meal at a time, one insulin dose at a time. And we really want you to let someone know if you're struggling. You're not alone. If there's no one in your real life that can help you, there's plenty of us on the internet. All you need to do is reach out. And to those of you that you may not be suffering this, you may know who's struggling with an eating disorder, I'd love you to know that you just keep supporting them, doing what you're doing. It can be really hard to love someone who's going through this, but the fact, if you're there and you're non-judgmental and you support them all the way through, they will get there. So really just a thank you to all those people who support us and work with us and help us out.
Yeah, so for your information, Georgie and I will be attending the IDF World Diabetes Congress in Abu Dhabi later next month. So if you'll be there as well, do catch us around at the conference area and, speak to us, talk to us, learn, understand a bit more about what Georgie does as an Australian manager for Diabetes and Eating Disorders Awareness Group. Or you can talk to me more about Vida Change, or you can just simply drop by and say hi. So thank you all once again. Thank you to Georgie for being our guest speaker for this series of the Vida Change minisode. And we hope all those who are watching and following us had a great time with Vida Change team on this discussion about diabetes and eating disorders. So keep the comments coming and do post it on our Facebook page, the video in the comment box. And you can stay connected to our website, Facebook page, or Twitter for updates from the Vida Change team.